Michael rushed to Daniel, his face filled with worry and his trembling hands. "Brother, please help me. I don't know what to do anymore." Daniel looked up from his desk. He worked in a big company and had been there for years. But Michael, his younger brother, never seemed to find his place in life. He always had bad luck with jobs and had a habit of quitting or being fired. "What is it this time?" Daniel asked, his voice calm but tired. "Please, I need your help. I want to start a business, but I don't have the money. I promise I won't waste it. I know I've failed before, but I've learned. Just give me one more chance. Please, Daniel. You're my only hope." Daniel thought for a moment. His brother had let him down so many times. But Daniel still had a soft heart for him. They had lost their parents young, and Daniel had always looked after Michael. "Okay," Daniel said after a long pause. "I'll help you this one time. But this is your last chance. Don't come back if you fail again." Michael smiled and hugged him tightly. "I won't fail, brother. I'll make you proud." Daniel gave Michael the money he needed to start his business. He only hoped his brother would finally make something of himself. Michael started his business with the money Daniel gave him. At first, it was slow, but very soon, things changed. The business began to move very fast. People came from far and near to buy from him. Before long, Michael was making good money. He bought a new car, moved into a bigger house, and even started dressing like a big man. Everyone that knew him before could not believe how much he had changed. Daniel was happy when he saw how well his brother was doing. He felt proud that he could help Michael stand on his feet. But life, as they say, can turn at any time. One morning, as Daniel sat in his office, without warning, news spread that the company had been sold to new owners, and all the workers sacked, including Daniel. Even though he had worked faithfully for many years, it didn't matter. Daniel packed his things and left the office that day with a heavy heart. He didn't know what to do next. Most of his savings had gone into helping Michael start his business. Still, Daniel believed that Michael would stand by him. After all, he had once lifted Michael from nothing. He didn't know that the brother he loved had already changed. Money and pride had entered Michael's heart. Daniel was about to face the shock of his life. After leaving his office that day, Daniel sat alone in his small apartment, thinking about his life. Days passed, and things became harder. His rent was almost due, food was running low, and he had no job. He hadn't found a new job. His little hope was shattered. The investment he made with the money he had left turned out to be fraud. The people disappeared with his money. Daniel was left with nothing. Tears filled his eyes that night as he sat on his couch, holding the empty wallet in his hand. Finally, after much thought, with no other option, he went dressed up to meet Michael. Michael's house was very big now. A tall gate stood before him. Daniel knocked and waited. After a while, the gateman came out. Daniel told him he was Michael's brother. The gateman went inside to call his boss. When Michael came out, he looked at Daniel from head to toe like a stranger. He didn't even smile. Daniel explained everything. He told him about the company being sold, about losing his job, and how the small money he had left was stolen through a fake investment. He begged Michael to help him, even if it was just a small loan, until he could find another job. Michael listened quietly, his face hard. Then he cleared his throat and said, "I don't dash money anyhow anymore. If you want me to help you, you must work for it. You can start by working as a salesboy in my shop." Daniel opened his mouth in shock. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Work as a salesboy? For the business he used his own money to help Michael start? He shook his head slowly. "Michael, how can you say that?" he asked, his voice low. Michael shrugged. "If you are too big to work, then no help for you." Without waiting for a reply, Michael turned and walked back into his house, leaving Daniel standing there like a fool. The gate man came and pushed the gate shut. Daniel stood outside the house for a long time, feeling pain deep in his chest. It was that day he realized that money had truly changed his brother. Slowly, he turned and walked away into the night. Every day, Daniel woke up with no idea where to start. He would wear his cleanest shirt and move from street to street, knocking on office doors, looking for any job he could find. Most days, he came back with nothing but dust on his shoes and hunger in his belly. Some old friends that used to laugh with him before now crossed to the other side of the road when they saw him coming. Some even acted like they didn't know him again. There were days Daniel would sit by the roadside, watching people pass by, wondering if life would ever smile on him again. Daniel's heart would break all over again, but he refused to give up. One Sunday afternoon, as Daniel sat under a mango tree thinking about his life, a kind old man who lived nearby saw him and called him. "Come here, young man," the man said. Daniel stood up and went to him. After hearing Daniel's story, the man said, "I have a big shop where I sell building materials. It's not much, but I need someone honest as a manager. I've heard about how good you are. Maybe one day you will stand on your own again." Daniel thanked him with tears in his eyes. It wasn't the big office job he used to have, but it was a new beginning. Little did Daniel know that life was preparing him for something even greater. Daniel started work at the building materials shop the very next day. It wasn't an easy job. He would wake up early every morning, open the shop, and make sure everything was in order. Sometimes he would help the workers arrange the goods, bags of cement, iron rods, roofing sheets, and other heavy materials, just to make sure the shop was neat and ready for customers. Even though he was the manager, Daniel was not too proud to lend a hand when needed. But his main work was to oversee the sales, keep records, supply goods, and make sure everything ran well. Customers loved Daniel because he was polite and honest. He would greet everyone with a smile and attend to them quickly. The old man was very pleased with how much his income had increased. After a short period of time, the old man who gave him the job started trusting him with bigger responsibilities. He partnered with him as a co-owner. Little by little, Daniel began to save money. Meanwhile, news was flying around town that Michael was now living like a king. People said he had opened 2 more shops and even bought a second car. He was always seen in the company of women, partying from one hotel to another. Daniel heard all these things, but kept quiet. He didn't let anger or bitterness enter his heart. He believed that when the time was right, life would turn around for him too. And somehow, even with all his struggles, he found peace in his heart. Little did he know, the winds of change were already blowing. At first, Michael's life looked like a dream. He wore the best clothes, drove the finest cars, and threw parties almost every weekend. People praised him everywhere he went. Some even called him Big Man. But little by little, things started to change. Michael spent more money than he made. He trusted the wrong friends, gave loans he could not collect back, and opened shops he could not manage well. His workers started stealing from him, but he was too busy chasing pleasure to notice. The business that once brought him respect and wealth began to shake. Debts piled up. Customers complained. Suppliers refused to give him goods unless he paid up front. Still, Michael didn't stop his lavish lifestyle. He believed the money would keep flowing like before. Meanwhile, Daniel continued to work quietly in the building materials shop. His savings grew. The old man, now more like a father to him, trusted him completely. Michael's biggest shop had closed down. People whispered that he owed too much rent and could not pay. Some said they saw him begging a hotel manager to give him more time to settle his bill. The friends and women who once surrounded him disappeared like smoke. Daniel heard all these stories but kept silent. He knew life had a way of teaching lessons. Inside his heart, Daniel prayed for his brother, not with anger, but with pity, because deep down, he remembered the boy who once looked up to him with innocent eyes, before pride and greed came into his heart. And so, as Michael's world crumbled, Daniel's new life was just beginning to blossom. Michael's life continued to unravel. He could no longer keep up with the lies he had built around himself. The lavish lifestyle that once made him the center of attention became a distant memory. His reputation faded, and he became known as the man who had lost everything. The businesses that once made him proud were now closed, and the people who had once called him Big Man had all disappeared. His flashy clothes, fast cars, and wild parties were now just memories. Now, he found himself struggling to pay even the smallest debts, with no one to help him. As he walked through the town, he passed by his big old shops. The once bustling places were now locked up, with no sign of life. His heart sank as he thought back to when he had it all, when he could walk into a room, and everyone would look up to him. But all that was gone. He knew it was time to face the truth. He had let pride and greed guide him, and now he had nothing left. In his heart, he knew there was only one person who could help him: Daniel. The same Daniel he had once looked down on and mocked. But now, standing in the ruins of his former life, he realized how wrong he had been, and how badly he had treated the only family who truly cared for him. Swallowing what little pride he had left, Michael gathered himself and set off to find Daniel. Michael found Daniel at the same building materials shop, which had now expanded into a big company through Daniel's hard work. Daniel was addressing the staff, smiling warmly. For a moment, Michael stood at the entrance, too ashamed to walk in. He remembered the day he had mocked Daniel, the day he called him a beggar, and told him to become his houseboy. The shame burned deep in his chest. Finally, he gathered himself and walked into the shop. Daniel looked up, surprised to see him. For a long moment, the two brothers just stared at each other. Michael looked thinner, older, and broken. He cleared his throat and said in a low voice, "Brother, please, I need your help." The workers and customers nearby turned their heads slightly, pretending not to listen but hearing every word. Daniel put down his pen and looked at Michael with calm eyes. Not angry, not proud, just calm. He said quietly, "When I needed you most, you mocked me. You told me to become your houseboy." Michael's lips trembled. "I was foolish. Please forgive me. I have nothing left." Daniel shook his head slowly. "I have forgiven you," he said. "But as for helping you, I'm sorry. That door has closed." He turned back to his work without another word. Michael stood there, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. After a while, he turned and walked away, alone, just as he had once left Daniel. Outside, the sun burned hot, but Michael felt only cold inside. He knew he had lost not just money, but something far more precious: the trust and love of the only brother who truly cared for him. Michael's story became one of quiet regret, and Daniel's became one of strength and resilience. In the end, Daniel's hard work, patience, and humility had paid off. His business grew, his reputation solidified, and he became a man respected in the town, not for the things he had, but for the character he built over time. People trusted him not because of his wealth, but because of his kindness, honesty, and the way he treated others. Michael, on the other hand, was left with nothing. He had gained the world, but lost his soul. His wealth had faded. His pride had consumed him. And now he was alone. All the people he had once called friends, gone. The lesson was clear to anyone who cared to listen. Pride is a dangerous companion. It blinds you to the truth, blinds you to the ones who truly matter. And when you fall, it is not just the money or the things that hurt. It's the trust and love you lost along the way. Daniel had forgiven his brother, but there are some wounds that time cannot heal. Trust, once broken, takes years, sometimes a lifetime, to rebuild. So, as Daniel continued to build his future, he knew that not all who lose will find their way again. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. But for those who keep their hearts kind, their hands hardworking, and their minds humble, they will find a peace that no amount of riches can ever buy. Pride comes before a fall, and sometimes, when you break a heart, you cannot mend it again.
The end.
Daniel had been busy with his new life, his wife, and the business he was building. But when he received a call from Michael, his heart sank. His brother, who had struggled in the past, had reached out for help. It seemed that Michael was having a hard time, finding steady work, and was still struggling to make ends meet. Daniel, despite their past, decided to offer some support. He couldn't bear to see his brother suffer anymore. Every time Michael arrives at his house to apologize, he could see the weariness in his brother's eyes. They hadn't spoken much in the last few years, and it felt strange. Michael hugged him warmly, eager to show that he had changed. Daniel invited Michael to live with him and his family until he could stand back on his feet. Michael's gaze lingered a little too long on his wife, Bolu. It was subtle, but Daniel didn't notice the shift in the atmosphere. His brother wasn't just struggling to find work. He was struggling with something else. As the days passed, Daniel helped Michael organize his life, encouraging him to take better care of himself and work harder. But it didn't take long before Michael seemed to have his sights set on something else entirely. As the days went by, Michael seemed to be acting differently, more confident, more attentive, and caring to his brother's wife. When he was off work, he was cleaning up the house, fixing things that had long needed repair, and, most noticeably, spending more time with her. As he had heard her complaining about Daniel spending less time with her. Michael's smile was too sly, his words too sweet when he spoke to her. It wasn't long before Michael began complimenting her more often, admiring her cooking, her laugh, the way she carried herself. At first, Bola took it as a harmless gesture, just her brother-in-law trying to be friendly. But then, Michael's gestures grew bolder. He took advantage of Daniel's absence at home, and before you know it, Bola became fond of Michael, always craving his presence. Daniel, busy with his own work and trying to keep things stable for his family, didn't notice how much Michael and his wife was changing. She finally gave in to Michael, and they began to have a secret affair. Bola's pregnancy came as a surprise, though not entirely unexpected. She and Daniel had been trying for years to have a child, but nothing had worked. When Bola discovered she was pregnant, it was a blessing. She was happy, but also unsure because of the timing. She knew that the child could be Michael's. In the weeks leading up to her pregnancy, she had been with both Daniel and Michael. It had been more frequent with Michael, and the timing of everything made her realize that, while Daniel might be the father, Michael could just as easily be the one. But Bola didn't let the uncertainty trouble her. She didn't feel guilty about her affair with Michael, especially not after everything that had happened. She had no reason to worry. No one would ever find out. Her life with Daniel was normal, He was overjoyed when she told him the news. They had been longing for a child, and now their prayers seemed to have been answered. Daniel supported her through the pregnancy, helping with whatever she needed, eagerly anticipating the arrival of their son. But Michael, deep down, knew the truth. He had been with her more often, especially during the time when conception would have occurred. His gut told him that the child was his, but like Bolu, he chose not to dwell on it. The child would be raised as Daniel's son, but Michael didn't care about the details. He cared that his son would be treated well, and that was all that mattered. One evening, while Daniel was out of town for business, Michael found himself alone with Bolu in the living room. The atmosphere was calm, but there was an underlying tension, as if both of them knew a serious conversation was imminent. Michael glanced at Bolu and, in a soft but firm voice, spoke the truth that had been weighing on his mind for some time. You know, the child, he's mine. Bolu paused, her heart skipping a beat, but she didn't flinch. She had known this moment was coming. She had expected it. Her calm expression remained unchanged as she looked at Michael and replied, I know. For a moment, the weight of their secret hung in the air. Michael's gaze softened as he continued, I'm not going to say anything to Daniel. I just want my son to have the best life. That's all that matters to me. Bolu nodded in agreement, relieved by Michael's words. She had never intended to tell Daniel the truth, but hearing it from Michael made her feel more at ease. We'll keep it between us. Daniel would give him the world. I'm certain about that. They both silently agreed to keep their affair a secret. The child, whose father could be either Daniel or Michael, would never know the truth. Brian was born healthy, just as Bolu and Daniel had hoped. The joy of having a child filled the house, and Daniel was overjoyed, pouring all his energy into providing for his family. But deep down, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that Brian was his. The baby's features, his eyes, his smile, it all reminded Michael of himself. As Brian grew older, there was an undeniable connection between him and Michael. They laughed and played. It was as if the child instinctively knew that Michael was his father, but neither of them spoke about it. Michael continued to play his part as the loving uncle, while Bolu maintained her role as the devoted wife to Daniel. They kept their secret hidden from everyone else, especially Daniel. Brian's bond with Michael grew stronger as he got older. Sometimes, Michael would find himself spending more time with Brian than his work, helping with small tasks or just watching the child play. It felt natural, like a father-son relationship. And Michael couldn't help but feel a deep affection for the boy, Daniel and Bolu's young child. Brian falls gravely ill, and the family is thrown into a panic. Brian was taken to the hospital. They ran several tests, but it all revealed that Brian's genotype was not the same as both parents. The doctors were confused. Mr. Daniel, the doctor said, you are AA and your wife is AA, but this child is AS. I am so sorry, sir. You should talk to your wife. Daniel, still in denial, refused to believe that Brian was not his son, and his wife was not having an affair. Bolu was so scared. The truth was not far to be revealed. She had never expected things to go this way. A paternity test was done. The DNA test results came back, and the truth was more devastating than Daniel could have imagined. The test confirms that he is not the biological father of his child. Bolu, overwhelmed by guilt, finally confesses that the child is Michael's. She explains how it all started. Her loneliness, her yearning for attention, and how Michael had been there for her when Daniel wasn't. She apologizes profusely. But the damage has been done. Daniel is left in shock, feeling betrayed by both the brother he helped and the wife he trusted. Daniel confronted Michael and Bolu, his heart heavy with rage and disbelief. The tension in the room was palpable as Daniel's eyes flared with betrayal, disbelief, and pain. He stood before them, his hands clenched into fists, his chest rising and falling with every breath. Michael, Daniel began, his voice hoarse. How could you? My own brother. How could you do this to me? His words were sharp, laced with anger and sorrow. And you, Bolo, how long were you planning to keep this from me? He looked at his wife, the woman he thought he knew and trusted, the one he had shared dreams of a future with. How long were you going to let me live a lie? Michael shifted uncomfortably, his expression torn between guilt and frustration. I never wanted it to go this far, Daniel. I don't. Daniel cut him off, his voice rising. You never wanted it to go this far? Then why did you keep going? Why did you keep lying to me, to my face, every single day? His anger was overwhelming, the pain of his brother's betrayal cutting deeper than he could have imagined. Bolu had tears streaming down her face. She could barely look at Daniel, the guilt consuming her. Daniel, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I was lonely. She broke down, her sobs echoing through the room. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Daniel took a step back, holding his hands up in disbelief. Lonely? You had everything. My trust, my love, and my family. And you threw it all away. For what? For him? For a momentary escape? His voice cracked, the hurt more evident now than the anger. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his own guilt apparent. I never wanted to hurt you, Daniel. I never meant for it to end like this. But the truth is, I've always cared for Bolu. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Daniel's eyes darkened. You don't get to justify this. You betrayed me, both of you. His words stung as they echoed in the room, leaving a silence so heavy it was suffocating. Bolu reached for Daniel, her voice breaking as she pleaded, Please, Daniel. I was wrong. I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you, I always have. This mistake, it doesn't change how I feel about you. Daniel took a deep breath, the weight of the situation sinking in. He had never imagined that something like this could happen to him. His brother, the one he had trusted with everything, the one he had given everything for, had shattered him. His wife, the woman he had promised to spend his life with, had broken that promise in the most painful way possible. I don't know if I can ever forgive either of you, Daniel said, his voice low, his heart heavy with the weight of betrayal. He stood tall, his fists still clenched. But you can start by getting out. Both of you, get out. Now. I never want to see you again in this house. Michael and Bolu froze in place, the weight of Daniel's words hitting them both like a brick. Daniel's gaze was unforgiving as he pointed to the door. Michael opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. Bolu was trembling, her tears falling freely now. But there was nothing left to say. With one last look at Daniel, Bolu walked toward the door, followed by Michael. Daniel didn't flinch. He watched them go, his heart heavy but resolute. As the door slammed shut behind them, Daniel exhaled sharply, the weight of the betrayal still sitting in his chest. The house was quiet, empty, broken. Daniel struggled with the truth. The betrayal cut deeper than anything he could have ever expected. What would you have done if you were Daniel? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more captivating African tales that explore the complexities of human nature. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. More twists and turns are coming your way.